shot a man last week. In the back. I miss it now. It was really interesting. Still, there's no point being depressed about it. You have to look to the future. Besides, it can be useful to have this sort of thing under your belt. You never know when you may be called upon to repeat the experience. It wasn't in the line of duty. I wasn't a policewoman or someone who takes violence in their stride. It was with a harpoon gun, actually. But it wasn't an accident. My decision to kill was arrived at only after a visible tussle with my conscience. I had to make it plain that once I pulled the trigger, life would never be the same again. This was a woman at the crossroads. It wasn't crossroads, of course. They don't shoot people in crossroads. At any rate, not with harpoon guns. If somebody were to get shot in crossroads, it would be with a weapon more suited to the motel ambience. I have been in crossroads, though. I was in an episode involving a forked lunch. At least, I was told it was a forked lunch. The script said it was a fingered buffet. I said to the floor manager, I said, Rex, are you on cams? Because I'd really like some direction on this point. Are we toying or are we tucking in? He said, forget it, we're losing the food anyway. I was playing woman in a musk-wash coat, the guest at a wedding reception, and I'd been scheduled to be in just that one episode. However, in my performance, I tried to suggest that I'd taken an interest in the hotel, in the hopes that I might catch the director's eye and he'd have me stay on for the following episode, which involved a full-blown weekend. So I acted an interest in the soft furnishings, running my fingers along the formica and admiring the carpet on the walls. Only then Rex came over and told me that they'd put me in a musk-wash coat to suggest that I was a sophisticated woman. Could I please try and look a little bit more at home in a 3-star motel? I wasn't at home in that sort of motel, I can tell you. I said to the man I'd been put next to, whom I took to be my husband, I said, curtains in orange nylon and no placemats. There's not even the veneer of civilization. He said, don't talk to me about orange nylon. I was on a jury that sentenced Richard Attenborough to death. We'd been told to engage in simulated cocktail chit-chat, so we weren't being unprofessional. Talking. That is something I pride myself on. I am a professional to my fingertips. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Even if it's just a walk-on, I simply must get involved right up to the hilt. I can't help it. People who know me tell me I'm a very serious person. The strange thing is, though, I never get to play serious parts. The parts I get offered tend to be fun-loving girls who take life as it comes and aren't afraid of a good time should the opportunity arise type thing. I'd call them vivacious if we didn't carry overtones of the outdoor life. In short, I play the kind of girl who's quite at home on a bar stool and seldom has to light her own cigarette. That couldn't be further from me because, for starters, I'm not a smoker. I mean, I can smoke if a part requires it. I am a professional, and you have to have as many strings to your bow as you can in this game. Though, having said that, I'm not a natural smoker. And what's more, I surprise my friends by not being much of a party goer either. I'd rather curl up with a book. However, this particular party, I'd made an exception. I'd met this ex-graphic designer who was quitting the rat race and moving off to Zimbabwe, and he was having a farewell do at the flat of an air hostess friend of his in Mitcham, and he asked would I come. I thought, well, it's not every day you get someone moving to Zimbabwe, so I said yes. And I'm glad I did, because that's how I got the audition. hobby is people. I collect people. So when I saw this interesting looking man standing in the corner, the next thing I know, I'm talking to him. I said, "You look like an interesting person. I'm interested in interesting people. Hello." He said, "Hello." I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm in films." I said, "Ooh, that's interesting. Got anything in the pipeline?" And then he starts telling me about this project he's working on, making videos for the overseas market, targeted chiefly at West Germany. I said, "Are you the producer?" He said, "No, but I'm on the production side. The name's Spud." I said, "Spud, that's an interesting name. I'm Leslie." He said, "As a matter of fact, Leslie, we've got a bit of a problem at the moment. You see, our main girls had to drop out because her back's packed in. Are you an actress?" I said, "Well, it's interesting you should ask, Spud, because as a matter of fact, I am." And then he says, "I'm going to go away, Leslie. Would you excuse me a moment?" And I said, "Why, Spud? Where are you going?" He said, "I'm going to go away to make one phone call." As it transpires, the director is seeing possible replacements the very next day at an address in West London. He said, "It's funny, because I'm based in Ealing." I said, "Isn't that West London?" He said, "Yes, it is. Where's your stomping ground?" I said, "Bromley, for my sins." He said, "Now that's a farish cry. Why not bed down at my place?" I said, "Thank you very much, kind sir, but I didn't fall off the Christmas tree yesterday." I know something about personality. There's a chapter on it in this book I'm reading. It's by an American. They're the experts where personality is concerned. The Americans. They've got it down to a fine art. It makes a big thing of interviews, so I was able to test it out. The director's not very old. Blue suit, tie loose, sleeves turned back. I put him down as the university type. Said his name was Simon, which I instantly committed to memory. That's something the book tells you. Purpose and use of name. He said, "Forgive this crazy time." I said, "I'm sorry, Simon." He said, "Like 9:30 in the morning." I said, "Simon, the day begins when the day begins. You're the director." He said, "Yes, well, have you done anything I might have seen you in?" I said, "Well, Simon, one place you may have seen me is in Tess. Roman Polanski. I played Chloe." He said, I don't remember her. Was she in the book?" I said, "Book? Simon, this is Tess. Roman Polanski. Chloe was the one on the back of the farm cart wearing a shawl. The shawl was original 19th century embroidery, all hand done." "Do you know Roman, Simon?" I asked. He said, "Not personally, no." I said, "Well, physically he's quite small, but we had a very good working relationship. Very open." He said that was good because Travis is a very open character. I said, "Travis? That's an interesting name, Simon." He said, "Yes, she's an interesting character. She spends most of the film lying on the top deck of a yacht." I said, "Yacht? Simon, that's so interesting. My brother-in-law has a small powerboat berthed at Ipswich." He said, "Well, snap." I said, "I know, small world." He said, "Well, ideally, I'd love to sit here and chat all day, but I've got a bit of a tight schedule. And I know it's only 9:30 in the morning, but could I see you in your bra and pants?" I said, "Simon, 9:30 in the morning, 10:30 at night, we're both professionals." "But," I said, "could we just put another bar on the radiator, because if we don't, we won't be able to tell my tits from goose pimples." He had to laugh. That was another thing the book talks about. Humour. Usefulness of in breaking the ice. Well, once I'd got my things off, he said, "Well, you've passed the physical. Now for the oral. Do you play chess?" I said, "Chess, Simon? Do you mean the musical?" He said, "No, the game." I said, "Actually, Simon, I'm afraid I don't. Will that be a problem?" He said, "Not if you can water ski." Travis, he said, is fundamentally an outdoor girl, but we thought it might be interesting to make her an intellectual on the side. I I said, well, Simon, I'm more than happy to learn both chess and water skiing, but can I make a suggestion? Reading usually shows a studious temperament, and I'm a very convincing reader because it's something I frequently do in real life. I could tell he was impressed. So then I said, another thing, Simon, and that is glasses. Spectacles, Simon. These days are not unbecoming, and if you put Travis in a pair of spectacles with something in paperback, well, that says it all. He said, you've been most helpful. I said, the paperback could be something on the environment, or if you want to continue the water skiing theme, something on water skiing or the environment possibly. I mean Lake Windermere. He was showing me out by this time, but then I said, and one more thing, Simon, and that is a briefcase. If you put Travis in a bikini and give her a briefcase, you get the best of every possible world. He said, I'm most grateful. You've given me a lot of ideas. I said, goodbye, Simon. I hope we can work together. The drill for saying goodbye is you take the person's hand in yours, clasp your other hand over the top of theirs firmly, look into their eyes, smile, and reiterate their name. This lodges you in their mind, apparently. So I did all this, only I got about halfway down the stairs and I had another thought, so I just popped back up. When I got into the room, Simon was on the phone and I could hear him saying, you'll never believe this. I said, don't hang up, Simon, only I just wanted to make one thing clear. When I said briefcase, I didn't mean the old-fashioned ones. There are these new briefcases now that open up and turn into mini writing desks. Being an up-to-the-minute girl, Travis would probably have that kind of briefcase. She could be sitting in a wet bikini with an open briefcase on her knee. I've never seen that on screen before, so it could be some kind of first. Ciao, Simon. Take care. That was last Friday. The book's got a section in the back where you can check your interview score. I'm a 75. Very good to excellent. Actually, I'm surprised they haven't telephoned. You'd never know this frock wasn't made for me, I said to Scott, whose wardrobe. She must be my double. He said, no, you're hers, the stupid cow. Talk about last minute though. 11 o'clock on Tuesday, and I'm just thinking about having a quick run round with the dustette. 6 o'clock the next morning, I'm sitting in the makeup chair in Leon's salon. When the phone rang, I assumed it was Simon, so I answered and said, hello, Simon, and a voice said, try Nigel. I said, well, Nigel, can you tell Simon that I haven't let the grass grow under my feet? I now play a rudimentary game of chess. He said, I don't care if you play a championship game of ice hockey, just don't get pregnant. It transpires the girl they've slated to do the part had been living with a racing driver, and, well, of course, the inevitable happened. Kiddie on the way. So I was next out of the hat. I know why they picked me, I said to Scott. It's because I had ideas about the part. He said it's because you have a 38-inch bust. His mother's confined to a wheelchair. He's got a lot on his plate. Anyway, I'm ready. I've been ready since yesterday morning. I wanted to find someone to speak to about the part. Only Scott told me they were out on the speedboat taking mute shots of the coastline. On Tess, you were never waiting around like this. Roman anticipated every eventuality. We filmed in a forest once, and the toilet arrangements were immaculate. There was also provision for a calorie-controlled diet. I said to Scott, I'm not used to working like this. He said, let's face it, dear, you're not used to working. Why didn't you bring your knitting? I said, Scott, I do not knit. He said, well then, paint a nail, pluck an eyebrow, be like me, find something useful to do. He's thin as a rail, and apparently an accomplished pianist, as well as seemingly being makeup and wardrobe. On Tess, we had 3 caravans for makeup alone. Eventually, Simon pops his head round the door. I said, hello Simon, long time no see. Did Nigel tell you I can play chess? He said, chess? I said, yes. He said, aren't you the one that can water ski? I said, no. He said, bugger, and disappeared. I said to Scott, Simon's quite young for a director. He said, director? He couldn't direct you to the end of the street. He just does all the running about. I said, well then, who's the director? He said, Gunther. I said, Gunther? That sounds a continental name. He said, yes, German. I said, oh, I've been to Germany once, Dusseldorf. He said, well then, the 2 of you will have a lot to talk about, won't you? I have a feeling Scott may be gay. I'm still waiting hours later when another young fellow pops his head round the door. I said, Gunther? He said, Nigel. I said, we spoke on the phone. He said, I know, I'm about to commit suicide. I've just been told you don't water ski. I said, well, Nigel, I can learn. I picked up the skateboard in 5 minutes. He said, precious, 5 minutes is what we do not have. You don't by any chance have fluent French, do you? I said, no, why? He said they thought about making her French. I said, Nigel, how can she be French when she's called Travis? Travis isn't a French name. He said, the name isn't important. I said, it is to me. It's all I've got to build on. He said, I'll get back to you. I said, Nigel, what I do have is a smattering of Spanish, the legacy of several non-package type holidays on the Costa del Sol. Could Travis be half Spanish, perhaps? He said to Scott, great. We wanted someone with fluent French who could water ski, and what do we get? Someone with pidgin Spanish who plays chess. Scott said, well, don't look at me. I started off a landscape gardener. I'm still waiting to be used in the afternoon, which is when they did the water skiing. Some girl from the local sub-aqua did it. She works part-time at a quayside restaurant where we all ate dinner last night. I saw her on her way into makeup. Pleasant enough, but didn't look a bit like me. You see, I'm quite petite, only she was on the large side. I didn't say anything at the time, but I thought, well, if she's supposed to be me, they're going to run into some serious continuity issues later on. So I decided to go in quest of the director and tell him. Nobody was about on the yacht except for a man who was dusting the camera. He said the shot was POV water ski, so they'd only be seeing her elbow. I said, will that work? He said, well, of course, you know, cinema, magic of. Mind you, he said, if it were up to him personally, he said he'd rather see my elbow than hers any day. He said his name was Terry. I said, well, Terry, it's nice to meet someone civil. He said, oh, you know, Leslie, it's the usual story. Art comes in the door, manners go out of the window. Why is making a film like being a mushroom? I said, why, Terry? He said, because they keep you in the dark and every now and again someone comes in and throws a big bucket of shit over you. He laughed. I said, that's very interesting, Terry. Only they don't make mushrooms like that anymore. It's all industrialised. He said, you seem a cultured person. What say you and I don't spend the evening enjoying the delights of Leon Solent? His room's nicer than mine. His bathroom's got a hairdryer. Please don't misunderstand me. I've no objection to taking my top off. Only Travis, as I was playing her, wasn't the sort of girl who would take her top off. I said, I'm a professional, Nigel. Credit me with a little experience. It isn't Travis. I'd spent the whole day sitting on the top deck of a yacht as background while these Two older men had what I presumed was a business discussion. One of them, who was covered in hair and had a real weight problem, was my boyfriend, apparently. Travis was supposed to be a good time girl. Well, he never actually saw me having a good time. Just lying on this freezing cold deck, plastering on the sun cream. I said, Nigel, I'm not sure if the cameraman's noticed, but would I be sunbathing? There's no sun. He said no sun is favourite. Nigel's the first assistant. Here, there and everywhere. Gunther never speaks. Not to me, at least. He just stands behind the camera with that little hat on. He's not a patch on Roman. Roman had a smile for everyone. Anyway, I'm lying there and I say, Nigel, would I be right in assuming that I'm a denizen of the cocktail belt? He said, why? A bit guardedly. I said, because to me that implies a cigarette holder, and I produced quite a modest one which I happened to have brought with me. Only I'd hardly got it open when he relieved me of it and said they were going with the suntan lotion. I said, Nigel, I hardly think the two are incompatible. I can read at the same time as applying suntan lotion. That's what professionalism means. He checked with Gunther and came back and said, forget the book. Suntan lotion is favourite. I said, Nigel, can I ask you something? He said, yes. I said, what is my boyfriend discussing exactly? He said, business. I said, Nigel, would I be correct in assuming it's a drugs deal? He said, does it matter? I said, it matters to me. It matters to Travis. It helps with my character. He said, what would help your character is if you took your bikini top off. I said, Nigel, would Travis do that? We know she reads. We know she plays chess. Is she really the kind to go topless? He said, listen, who do you think you're playing, Emily Bronte? Gunther wants to see your tits. I didn't even look at him. I just removed my bikini top and began applying sunscreen with all the contempt I could muster. We shot it, and Nigel came over and said that Gunther liked that, and if I could give him a hint more sensuality, it might be worth a close-up. So we did it again, and Nigel came back over and said that Gunther was liking what I was giving them, and was wondering if in the next take I could remove my bikini bottoms. I said, Nigel, Travis would certainly not do that. So he went and spoke to Gunther and came back and said that Gunther agreed with me. The real Travis would never do that. However, by displaying herself entirely naked, she was showing her utter contempt for her boyfriend's way of life. I said, well, Nigel, finally, Gunther's giving me something I can work with. He said, great, roll film, elbow the bikini bottom. We wrapped around 6, which is film parlance for packed up for the day. I said to Nigel, is Gunther happy? Did he like what I gave him? He said, Leslie, Gunther is an artist. He's never happy. But as he said earlier, at least we're cooking with gas. When I got back to the hotel, it took me a while to unwind. I'd become so identified with Travis that it was only after I'd had a hot bath that I began to feel her loosening her grip on me. I was looking forward to having drinks with the crew in the bar, swapping anecdotes about filming and the knowledge of a day's work well done. Only when I got downstairs, no one was about. Only Scott and one of the drivers. Apparently, they'd all gone out for supper at the restaurant where the fat girl who did the water skiing worked. I sat in the bar for a bit. There was no one there apart from me and this other man, and I said, my hobby is people. What do you do? Lo and behold, he's on the film too. The animal handler, Kenny. He's in charge of a cat. I said, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know there was a cat. I love cats. I love dogs, but I love cats. He said, well, she's asleep on my bed if you'd like to come and meet her. I said, isn't that convenient? He said, now Leslie, don't go running away with the idea. I am wedded to my small charges. So I went upstairs to his room and palled around with the cat for a while he told me about the other animals he'd handled. A zebra, a seal, an alligator, and umpteen ferrets. There was also a small trout in a tank in his room. Apparently it was going to be caught in a later scene and they were going to shoot it up close so it looked bigger. I said, Kenny, this is the kind of evening I like. Just two people talking about something interesting. When I woke up, I didn't know where I was at first. Then I saw the cat, sitting at the end of the bed, watching the trout. When you wrap on a film, you have to wait and see if there's what they call a hair in the gate. It's film parlance for the all clear. And thankfully there wasn't, because I couldn't have done it again. I'd created Travis, and though it was my lover who got shot, I felt it was something in me that was Travis that had died. My lover's name was Alfredo. That was my big line. He was the head of a crime syndicate of some sort. Only everyone in the yachting fraternity thought he was in the building trade. One night, while Alfredo and me were at a building federation dinner and dance, a young policeman swam out to our yacht to search it in his underpants. Only as luck would have it, Travis has a headache, so she and Alfredo leave their glitzy, ultra-respectable dinner and come back to the yacht. Originally, I was scripted to say, I can't help it, Alfredo. I have a headache. And we shot it like that once or twice, only then Gunther said that it might be more convincing if Travis's headache was so bad that she couldn't speak at all, and instead Alfredo simply said, you and your headaches. I said, well, if Travis's headache is actually a migraine, she probably wouldn't be able to speak. And Gunther said, well, whatever works for you. It's lovely, that moment, when you really feel a director begin to trust you and you can begin to build. Anyway, when Travis and Alfredo return to their cabin, they find the young police officer in his underpants behind the sofa. Alfredo takes out his gun and says, how fortunate that lovely Travis had a headache. And we had to leave our glittering reception. I was cross with her then, but now my mood has changed. Offer the gentleman a drink, Travis, and then go and take off your clothes. There's nothing I like better than making love after shooting a policeman. So I retire to the next room. In the meantime, Alfredo begins to taunt the policeman, telling him how he's going to kill him. But first, he tells him every detail of his drug smuggling operation, the way that criminals do when they've got someone at gunpoint. When I returned with no clothes on, the young policeman was talking about the evil of drugs and the young lives ruined and so on. Only I forgot to mention that in an earlier scene, when I was snorkeling, we'd been told that Travis had a younger brother, Craig, and that he'd got hooked on drugs and how devastated I'd been, and how I'd sworn revenge on the culprits should I ever come across them. So when the policeman is saying all of this about the horror of drugs, you can see that it comes as a revelation to Travis that her lover is involved in drugs. She thought it just been ordinary crime and stealing electrical goods. So very quietly, almost pensively, Gunther said, she reaches for the underwater spear gun on the sideboard. You see my lover's fat finger tighten on the trigger, getting ready to shoot the policeman, and that's when very quietly I say, "Alfredo." He turns and I shoot him straight through the chest, and you see the spear come through the back of his dinner jacket, killing him and ruining the jacket. Then there's a close-up shot of all the blood in his body and my face with a single tear rolling down my cheek. We did this in one take, which Nigel said was unique in the annals of filming. Only then Scott had to chip in and say it was also fairly unique to only have one dinner jacket. I couldn't have done it again anyway. I had nothing left. Nigel, what if Travis, drained of emotion by the death of her lover, clings to the policeman whose life she's just saved, and the two of them celebrate his deliverance by having sexual intercourse right then and there? Big debate. Gunther loved it. Only the actor playing the policeman wasn't keen. I think he might have been gay too. He had a moustache. Eventually, Nigel came over and told me that the favourite was for the policeman to look as though he was considering having sexual intercourse with Travis by running his fingers speculatively over her private parts. Only then pity drives out lust, and he covers her nakedness with an Oriental-style dressing gown, the property of her dead lover. But even then, we can see that he's not entirely abandoned the idea, because as he's fastening up the gown, you see his fingers linger over her chest. Afterwards, Gunther told me that if there had been any proper funny business, it would have detracted from the final scene of the film, where after all the excitement, the undercover policeman goes back to his regular girlfriend who cooks him a hot snack and who's a librarian, and the final scene of the film is the two of them making love, the moral being that sex is usually better with someone you're in love with, even if they are a bit homely and work in a county library, rather than someone like Travis who's just there for a good time. It's a shame, Gunther said to me later, because it's a very moral film, but people won't see it. I said, that's funny, Gunther, because I saw it that way from the very start. When we were in bed, I said, it's a shame we couldn't have done this sooner. Gunther said, Leslie, I make it a rule never to lay a finger on an actress until the whole thing is in the can. I said, Gunther, you don't need to explain it. We're both professionals. But can I ask you something? Was I Travis? Were you pleased with my performance? He said, listen, if someone's a bad actress, I can't sleep with her, so don't ask me if I was pleased with your performance. This is the proof. He's a real artist, Gunther. When I woke up in the morning, he was gone. I wandered downstairs to get some coffee, only there was no one from the unit around. Apparently they were all out taking establishing shots of the marina. I bought a postcard with a sinking ship on it. And I wrote, "Goodbye, gang, see you at the premiere," and left it at the front desk. On my way out, I bumped into Scott, who was loading laundry into a truck, and I said, "Goodbye, Scott, it's been a pleasure working with you." He said, "Oh, you win some, you lose some." I said, "Back to reality." He said, "Some of us never left it." Strange how older clothes are a bit too small. The film's coming out in West Germany first, and possibly Turkey after that. Gunther says it'll make me quite famous. I suppose I shall have to live with that. But I'm not just going to sit around and wait for the phone to ring. I'm going to acquire some new skills. Spoken Italian, selling expensive oil paintings, and canoeing. You see, the more you have to offer as a person, the better you are as an actress. Acting is really just giving.
I'd just taken up her tea this morning when she says, "Graham, I think the world of you." I said, "Well, I think the world of you." She says, "That's all right then." I said, "What's brought this on?" She said, "Nothing. The tea looks strong. Pull the curtains." Of course, I knew what had brought it on. She said, "I wouldn't want you to think you're not number one." I said, "Well, you're number one with me, too. Give me your teeth. I'll swill them." What it was we'd had a spot of excitement yesterday when we ran into a bit of Mother's past. I said, "Past? I didn't know you had a past. I thought I was your past." She said, "You." I said, "Well, we go back a long way. How does he fit in vis-a-vis Dad?" She laughed. "Oh, he was pre-Dad." I said, "Pre-Dad? I'm surprised you remember him. You don't remember to switch a blanket off." She said, "That's different. His name's Turnbull." I said, "I know." He said. I parked by the War Memorial, on a usual seat, when I went to go and get some reading matter. And then I waited outside while she used the disabled toilets. She's not actually disabled. Her memory's bad, but she says she prefers the disabled toilets because you get more elbow room. She always takes her time, diddling her hands and whatnot. And when she finally comes out, it turns out she's been chatting to the attendant. I said, "What about?" She said, "Hanging. She's in favour of stiffer penalties for minor offences." "Oh, I wish you'd been there, Graham. We know better, don't we, you and me? Oh, you could have given her the statistics." Where are we going for our tea? The thing about Mam is that although she's never had a proper education, she's picked up enough from me here and there to hold her own in discussions about up-to-the-minute issues like the environment and the race riots. And for a woman of her age and background, she actually has a very liberal slant. She'll look through my Guardian and she actually thinks for herself. Dr. Chowdhury said to me, "Full marks, Graham. The best way to avoid a broken hip is to have a flexible mind. Keep up the good work." They go mad round the War Memorial, so when we cross over, I generally slip my arm through hers until we're safely across. Only, once we're on the other side, she'll pause before taking her arm away. I said, "Let go, Mother." No, she'll postpone letting go, because once we were stopped by one of those questionnaire women who once mistook us for husband and wife. I mean, Mam has grey hair. She was doing this dodge and I said, "Mam, let go of me arm." I didn't really wrench it. Only next thing I know, she's lying flat on the pavement. I said, "Oh my God, Mother." People gather round and I pick up her bag. She sits up and says, "I've laddered both my stockings." I said, "Never mind your stockings, what about your pelvis?" She says it's these bifocals. They tell you not to look down. I was avoiding some sick. Somebody says, "That's a familiar voice." And there's this little man standing over her. Green Chilby hat, shorty raincoat. "Hello," he says. "Remember me?" Well, she doesn't remember people. I know this because she once swore me down she'd never met Joy Buckle, the woman who does flowers and felts and fabrics at my daycare centre. I said, "You do know Joy. You knitted her the tea cosy." That's all she can knit, tea cosies. And bed socks. Both of which are outmoded articles. I do tell her, I say you should branch out. If you can knit a tea cosy, you can knit a skiing hat. She's all right then. I will. Only have to stand over her, else she'll leave a hole for the spout. Anyway, I said, "You do remember Joy, because you said she had some shocking eyebrows." She said, "I hope you didn't tell her that." I said, "No, of course I didn't." She said, "Well, I just don't remember her." And that's the way she is. She just doesn't remember people. And here's this little green man saying, "Do you remember me?" "No," I said. "No, she won't. Come on, Mother. Let's get you up." Only she says, "Remember you? Oh, of course I remember you. You're Frank Turnbull. Must be what, 50 years? He says 52. Farley, 1934. She says Seacrest. He says, no sand in the bedrooms, and they both cracked out laughing. Meanwhile, she's still stuck on this freezing cold pavement. I said, come along, mother, we don't want piles. Only Mr. Highty-Tighty bumps in again. With all due respect, it's advisable not to move a person until it's been ascertained that no bones have been broken. I was in the St. John's Ambulance Brigade. Yes, said mother. And who did you practice your bandaging on? And they both burst out laughing again. He had on these bright yellow gloves. Could have been a bookie. Eventually, I got my arm round her waist and hoisted her up. Only his lordship's no help, as he claims to have a bad back. When I finally got her a sword to the perpendicular, she introduces him. This is Frank Turnbull, she says, a friend of mine from the old days. What old days? First I knew there were old days. Turns out he's a gents outfitter. Semi-retired, he's got a shop in Bradford and some sort of outlet in Morecambe. I thought, well, that accounts for the yellow gloves. Straight off, he takes charge. He says, what you need now, Vera, is a cup of coffee. I said, well, we're just going for some tea, weren't we, mother? Vera. Her name's not Vera. She's never been called Vera. My dad never called her Vera, except just the once when they were wheeling him into theatre. Vera. Right, he says, follow me, and puts his arm through hers. Careful, she says. You'll make my boyfriend jealous. I didn't say anything. Now, the cafe we generally patronise is just that bit different. It's plain, but it's classy. No cloths on the tables, the menu comes on a little slate, and the waitresses wear their own clothes. They look as if they're doing it just for the fun. The stuff's all homemade, and mother and I are both big fans of the date and walnut bread. I said, this is the place. Mr. Turnbull goes straight past. No, he says, I know somewhere just open up. Press on. Now, if there's one thing that mother and I agree on, it's that red is a common colour. And this whole entire place is done out in red. Tablecloths, red. Plates, red. Waitresses in red. Lampshades, red. And there's even those plastic sauce things that look like tomatoes. Also red. And when I look, there's a chip in the sugar. I thought, oh, Mum won't like this. She says, this looks nice. I said, Mum, there's a chip in the sugar. A detail, he says. They're still having their teething troubles. Is it 3 coffees? We like tea, I said. Only mother says, no, I feel like an adventure. I'll have coffee. He gets a hold of the menu and puts his hand on hers. Might I suggest, Vera, a cheeseburger? She says, oh, what's that? He says it's fresh country beef, mingled with golden fried onions, topped with a toasted cheese, served with French fries and a lemon wedge. Oh, she says, a lemon wedge? That sounds nice. I thought, well, I hope you can keep it down. It'll be the whole pizza story all over again. One mouthful, and at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm standing over her bedside with a bucket. She says, I like new experiences in eating. I had a pizza once, didn't I, Graham? I didn't say anything. They fetch the food, and she's wiring in. And he says, are you enjoying your cheeseburger? She says, I am. Would I be mistaken in thinking that's tomato sauce? He says, it is. She says, give us a squirt. And they both burst out laughing. He says, glass cups, Graham. You want to be careful, we'll see up your nose. More laughter. She says, Graham's quite refined. He often has a dry sherry. He says, well, he could do with a bit of smartening up a bit. You could do with one of those quilted jobs. I said, I don't like those quilted jobs. He sweats. Mother says, there's no excuse for that in this day and age, Mr. Turnbull says. The amount of preparations that are available on the market. You'll want to invest in some roll-on deodorant. Everybody could hear. And flares are an anathema, even in Bradford. Graham doesn't care. Do you, Graham? Mother says. He reads a lot. So what? Says Mr. Turnbull. I know several big readers who still manage to be men about town. Lovett Green's a nice shade. Listen, Graham, if I were you and I were squiring a lovely young woman like this about town, I would not do it in grey socks and sandals. These shoes, they're Italian. Feel. I always think Graham would have made a good parson, Mother says, feeling his foot. Only he doesn't believe in God. That's no handicap these days, Mr. Turnbull says. What do you do? He's between jobs at present, Mother says. He used to do soft toys for handicapped children. Then he was making paper flowers at one stage. I went to the toilet. When I come back, he's in the middle of saying, I don't believe in mental illness. 9 times out of 10, it's a case of pulling your socks up. I didn't say anything. Mother says, yes, well, I think the pendulum's gone too far. She didn't look at me. It's like these kids not eating, he says. They'd eat if they'd been brought up like us, Vera, wouldn't they? Nothing to eat. That's right, Mother says. They have it too easy. Did you marry? Twice, he says. I buried Amy last May. I was heartbroken, but life has to go on. I've got a son who lives in Stevenage, and 2 grandkids, one's at the motorbike stage. Do you drive? No, I said. You do? Mother says. You had that scooter. It was only a moped, I said. Well, a moped, Graham. They're all the same. I can't get him to blow his bloody trumpet. I've got a Rover 2000, Mr. Turnbull says. Handles like a dream. I think the solution to mental illness is hard physical labour. Making raffia mats. I'd go mad. Yes, said Mother. Only they do pottery as well. I've seen some lovely ashtrays. Feather bedding. I didn't say anything. He ran us home, promised to give her a tinkle next time he was in the neighbourhood, said he was often round here, tracking down 2-tone cardigans. Your mother is a lovely woman, he said. You'll want to cherish her. He does, Mother said. You're my boyfriend, aren't you, Graham? She put her arm through mine. There must have been a famine on, because we were just letting our midday meals go down when the vicar comes in. He breezes in, anorak and running shoes, and he says, You know, Mrs. Whittaker, I love coming to this house. He has the idea she's deaf. She's not. It's one of the few things she isn't. He says, Do you know why? It's because you two remind me of Jesus and his mother. I've always thought Jesus was a bit offhand with his mother personally. And I remember on one occasion he was actually rather snotty with her. Of course, Madam is over the moon. In her book, you can't get compared to the Queen Mother. The Virgin Mary is the next best thing. She says to him, Are you married? She asks him every time, never remembers. He says, No, Mrs. Whittaker. I am married to God. She says, Well, where'd that leave you with the housework? He says, I don't do as well as your Graham, that's for sure. He's got this place like a palace. She says, I do my whack, thank you very much. I washed 4 pairs of stockings this morning. She hadn't. She put them in the bowl and then they'd slipped her mind. So the whole operation devolved onto me. He said, How are you today, Mrs. Whittaker? She said, Stiff, down one side. I said she had a fall yesterday. She said, I never. I said, You did, Mother. You had a fall and then you bumped into Mr. Turnbull. She said, That's right, I did. And started rummaging in her handbag for a lipstick. She said, that's one of them anarchy things, isn't it? They've gone out to seas, and if you want to be like a man about town, you want to get one of those continental quilts. He says, oh. I said, she means one of those quilted jackets. She says, he knows what I mean. Where did you get those shoes? He says, these shoes, Mrs. Whittaker, are training shoes. She says, training? Training for what? Are you not fully qualified? He said, I think you'll find, Mrs. Whittaker, if Jesus were alive today, these were the shoes he would be wearing. She says, not if his mother had anything to say about it. She'd get him downstairs and Simpson's, give him a good pair of brogues. Someone told me the Italians make lovely shoes. The vicar takes this as an opportunity to tell us about people who have no shoes at all, and via this to a famine in Ethiopia. I fish out 50p, which he says will feed a family of 6 for a week. Could have brought me some Quality Street, says Mother. When he's at the door, he says, I take my hat off to you, Graham. I really do. I know it's hard. I've got a mother myself. When I get back, she says, Vicar, look more like the paper boy. How can you look up to someone in pumps? Just then there's a knock at the door. Get down, she says. He's back. Only it isn't. It's Mr. Turnbull. New outfit this time. Corduroy colour, little suede coat, maroon trousers. She says, oh, you're colourful. We just happen to have these slacks on offer, he replies. I was wondering whether or not you fancied a run down Bolton Abbey. Oh, Bolton Abbey, she says. That sounds nice. It's right up our street, isn't it, Graham? Graham's good with old buildings. Aren't you, Graham? He knows all the period of houses. There's one period that's just come in. Other people don't like it yet, but we do, don't we, Graham? I don't know, I said. You do? What is it? Victorian, I said. That's it, Victorian. Only there's been a lot pulled down recently. Mr. Turnbull yawns. I've got a bungalow. That's nice, Mother says. I like a nice bungalow, don't you, Graham? I said yes, I do. Provided it's not a blot on the landscape. Mine's architect designed, says Mr. Turnbull. It has a patio and a breakfast bar. It overlooks a beauty spot. Oh, that's nice, says Mother. Sounds tip-top. We'd better be getting our skates on, Graham. No, says Mr. Turnbull. I've got to pick up a load of green 3/4 length wing cheaters from Arkley. There won't be room for a third party. Isn't there anything on at the pictures? You'll be happy reading, says Mother. Won't you, Graham? Besides, says Mr. Turnbull, you don't want to be hanging around with your mother at your age, do you, Graham? I didn't say anything. I've been laying on my bed, reading. It's one of my magazines. I have a feeling that there's somebody watching the house, but I can't see anybody. Once or twice I've heard a knock at the door, but I haven't gone, in case there's nobody there. Today, they went over to York. It was after 7 till she came back. He generally comes in, but not this time. Just gives her a little kiss. She had to bend down. I said, "Did you have a good day?" She said, "Yes, lovely. We had egg and chips, tea, bread and butter. We've got a lot in common. And there's a grand new car park." I said, "Did you go to the Minster?" She said, "No, Frank's not really keen on old buildings. He says we need to look more into the future. There's a new car park in Bradford. That'll be next on the agenda." "You're quiet." I said, "Well, can you blame me? Dr. Chowdhury says to keep me in a stable environment. This isn't a stable environment. Not with your fancy men popping in every 5 minutes." She says, "He isn't my fancy man." I said, "Well, he's your fancy man in embryo." She said, "You know I don't know what that means." I said, "You do. How old are you?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "Of course you know." She said, "I don't. Tell me." I said, 72. She said, "That's not so old. How old was Winston Churchill?" I said, "When?" She says, "You think you've got it over me, Graham Whittaker, but I'll tell you something. My memory's better with Frank. He was telling me about the economy. You've got it all wrong." I said, "How?" She said, "You go around blaming it on the government. Frank says it's people like you." I didn't say anything, just came upstairs. When I went down again, she was still sat there, in her hat and jacket. I said, "Do you want to knit him a tea cosy?" She said, "I don't think he's really the tea cosy type. When I first knew him, he had a bike and sidecar. Besides, I think it's beyond the tea cosy stage." I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Graham, I want to do what's best for you. I love you, Graham. I would do anything to make you happy. If I think by dying it would make you happy, I would." I said, "Mother, your dying would not make me happy. In fact, the reverse. Your dying would make me unhappy. Besides, you're not going to die." She said, "No, I'm not. I'm not going to die, Graham. I'm going to get married. And the wedding's in Tenerife. Have one of your tablets." She made a cup of tea. I said, "How can you go to Tenerife? You're smothered at Scarborough." She said, "It's a 4-star hotel. Tip-top air conditioning. You get your breakfast from a long table." I said, "What about your bowels?" She said, "What about my bowels?" I said, "They're unpredictable at Morecambe. Get them to the Canary Islands, they'll be all over the place." She said, "Who said anything about the Canary Islands? I'm going to Tenerife." "What about post-Tenerife? What about then? Where will you live?" She said, "Here. Frank says he'll be away on and off on business, but we want to call this home." I said, "What about me?" She went through to the kitchen. "Well, we were thinking maybe you'd like to go back to the hostel. You were happy at the hostel." I said, "Ma'am, this is my home." She said, "But you loved the hostel. You rubbed shoulders with all sorts. Besides, a man shouldn't be living with his mother at your age. Frank says, have you had one of your tablets?" Now it's 4 o'clock. I can't sleep. There's a car parked outside. I think there's somebody in it, but I can't quite see. It feels like they're watching, like they used to before. I thought all that chapter was closed. This morning, I went to community caring down at the home care centre. It caters for all sorts. Steve, who runs it, is dead against what he calls the ghetto approach. He believes in having a nice mix of difficult personalities. It's what he describes as making the most fruitful exercise in problem solving and showing a more realistic model of society in general. There's a constant flow of coffee, oiling the wheels as Steve calls it, and we all are encouraged to ventilate our problems and generally let our hair down. I don't normally say anything as I've never really had any particular problems, but this time when Steve says, "Now, chaps and chapesses, who's ready to let the ball start rolling?" I get in quick and I tell him about Mother and Mr. Turnbull. When I'd finished, Steve says, "Thank you, Graham, for sharing your problem with us. Does anyone want to kick it around?" First off the mark is Leonard, who wonders whether Graham has sufficiently appreciated that older people can have relationships just the same as young folk. I suppose this is understandable coming from Leonard, as he's 65, only he doesn't have meaningful relationships. He's here because he was caught exposing himself outside of a Sainsbury's doorway. As Mother says, Tesco's, and you could understand it. Just then, Janice chips in. Had they been having sexual intercourse? I said I didn't want to think about it. Steve says, "Why?" I said I don't know. He says, "Maybe, instead of focusing about your mother, we should be discussing why you, Graham, are being so defensive about sexual intercourse." I said, "I'm not being defensive. She is my mother." Jackie, who's 9 parts lesbian, says, "Graham, she is also a woman." I couldn't believe this. I said, "Jackie, you are an ex-battered housewife. I didn't think you believe in marriage." She says, "Graham, I approve of a caring marriage." I said, "Jackie, this is not a caring marriage." She says, "Graham, what's Tenerife? That's caring. All I got was a black eye and a day trip to Fleetwood." Then they all have a go. Get Graham. Steve summed up. The general feeling of the group is that Graham could be more open. I said, "How can I be more open? There's someone watching the house." I wanted to discuss that further, only Leonard leaps in and says he wishes to discuss an episode outside of British Home Stores. I stuck it in a bit longer and then went home. Mother's sat there, all dolled up, chiffon scarf, lathered in makeup. She says, "Oh, I thought you were Mr. Turnbull." I said, "No." She says, "I'm just going to pop to the lab." She goes there 3 times in the next 10 minutes. I said, "You're not getting married today, are you?" She says, "No. There's a new Asda superstore just opened up. It's in Bingley. We thought we'd better go give it the once-over. Frank says there's a lovely array of suntan lotions." I said, "Mother, there's someone watching the house." She says, "I want to pick up some tissues, and Frank's been looking for a little chamois for his windscreen. He's promised me something called the Cheeseburger. There's a cafe in that part of the complex." Just then, there's a little toot on the horn. Mother runs to the lab. Again. I said, "Don't go. Don't leave me, Mum." She said, "I'm not giving in to you. You shouldn't be living with your mother at your age. Haven't you got anything better to do? You're a grown man. Is my underskirt showing?" He toots again. She says, "Look at your magazines. Make yourself a poached egg." I said, "Mother." She says, "There's chicken in the fridge. You could iron those 2 shirts. Give us a kiss, toodle pip, take a tablet." I thought I'd go and sit in the back room, where they couldn't see me. I pulled the curtains and I'm sat in the dark. I think I hear a knock at the door. I don't move. And I hear another one. Louder. I do like Dr. Chowdhury says and tell myself it's not happening. Only it is. Somebody shouts through the letterbox. I know you're in there. Open this door. So I do. And there is someone. It's a woman. She says, "Are you the son?" I said, "What?" She says, "Are you the son?" I'm the daughter. I said, "Have you been watching the house?" She says, "On and off." "Why?" I said, "Nothing." She says, "I don't know what there is to look so suited about." I said, "You better come inside." It's 9 o'clock when I hear them come back. I'm sitting, waiting, watching the TV. I said, "Did you have a good time?" "Oh yes," says Mother. "We did, thank you." Said, "Did you get your suntan lotion?" She says, "What suntan lotion?" Said, "You've forgotten." "Never mind." "How's Mr. Turnbull?" Says, "Oh, Frank, he's alright." She took her things off. "I just wish you'd get to know him, Graham. I'm sure you'd like him once you got to know him better." Said, "I will next time. Should have brought him in." Says, "Okay, I will." "What have you done today?" "Nothing." "You alright?" "You see," she says, "there isn't anyone outside." Says, "Oh yes there was." She says, "Oh Graham, have you had a tablet? Take one of your tablets." I said, "I don't want a tablet. I'll tell you who was outside. Mrs. Pamela Musgrave." She says, "Who's she?" I said, "Nee Turnbull, the daughter of your hobby-to-be." She says, "He hasn't got a daughter, he's got a son down south. He hasn't got a daughter. You're making things up again, have another tablet." I said, "I'm not making it up. There's something else I'm not making up. Mrs. Turnbull." She says, "There isn't a Mrs. Turnbull, she's dead. I'm going to the lab." I said, "She's not dead. She's not. She's in a wheelchair with a broken heart." After a bit, she comes out. "You're just saying all this. The number's on the pad. Ring it up. She's disabled, is his wife. Has been for 10 years. Her daughter looks after them. You're not the first. His Owen's doing this. One woman, it was the Canary Islands. Someone spotted you together at Bolton Abbey. A well-wisher. Tenerife." Later on, I took her a cup of tea. She had been crying. She said, "I bought this little bed jacket." I said, "I'm sorry, ma'am." She said, "It was right enough." What can you expect at my age? How old am I? 72. She said, "That's another thing. I remembered with Frank. I don't remember with you." I said, "I am sorry." She said, "How can you be sorry? How can you be sorry? You didn't even like him." I said, "You can do better." She said, "I'll be the judge of that." In a bit, she comes outside the door, shouting. She says, "You think you've got it over me, Graham Whittaker, but you don't. I've got it over you." said, go to bed. Turn your blanket off. You catch a cold. She says, I know the magazines you read. I said, chess. She said, yeah, chess men. Chess men with no clothes on. Chess in their birthday suits. Is that it? Chess men. The next day, she's right as rain. Doesn't remember it. Well, never mentions it anyway. Except, just as we're leaving the house, she says, I do love you, Graham. I said, I love you too. She says, anyway, I had a hearing aid. What's on the agenda for today then? I said I thought we might take a nice little ride down to Ripton Abbey. She's all, oh, Ripton. That's nice. We like old buildings, don't we? You and me. She slips her arm through mine.
Just a perfect day. Drink sangria in the park. And then later, when it gets dark, we go home. Just a perfect day. Feed animals in the zoo. Then later, a movie too, and then home. Oh, it's such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with you. Oh, such a perfect day. You just keep me hanging on. You just keep just a perfect day.
Now that's what I call a bad hair day.
Productions.